Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prehistory, a Traveler's Guide. And happy Halloween. We're your hosts, Dakota, Greg, and Scott. And today, special, we're going to do a paleontologist spotlight. A man who really helped open up Africa to the world in terms of paleontological discoveries. And today we're covering Paul Sereno and his illustrious career. Paul Sereno was born October 11th, 1957, so he had a birthday just recently. He's a professor of paleontology at the University of Chicago and a National Geographic explorer in residence. Sereno grew up in Naperville, Illinois, and graduated from Naperville Central High School. He was then educated at Northern Illinois University and Columbia University in paleontology. On August 14th, 2008, it was revealed that Sereno had uncovered a large Stone Age cemetery in Gabaro in the Nigerian Sahara, remnants of a people who lived from 10,000 to 5,000 years ago on the edge of what is then a large lake. The National Geographic documentary Skeletons of the Sahara was made about this discovery and premiered in 2013. Now on to the discoveries with Greg.
Okay, as we have here tonight, he helped discover a wide menagerie of dinosaur species. It may not be a comprehensive list, but it's a good list nonetheless. For dinosaurs, he is credited for discovering Aristeion, Afrovenator, Morphosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus, Deltadromeus, Eocarcharia, Eodromeus, Eoraptor, Erlionsaurus, Gracilloceratops, Moratorio Herrerasaurus, Jobaria, Critops, Nymongosaurus, Nigrosaurus, Pegamastix, new species of Psittacosaurus, Rajasaurus, Raptorex, Rugops, Spinostropheus, and Suchomimus. He also helped describe new fossils of Spinosaurus, which led to the, quote, new look of the animal, and other fossil reptiles, the subjects of what Crocs ate dinosaurs. Marasuchus, the African pterosaur, Sarcosuchus, Odontosuchus, Aryapasuchus, Caprosuchus, and Laganosuchus.
All right, thanks, Greg. And now on with the influences on paleontology with Scott.
Yup, influences on paleontology. He is one of the best well-known paleontologists in the modern era of paleontology research. Sereno co-founded Project Exploration, a non-profit science education organization to encourage city kids to pursue careers in science. He appears in the 2009 DVD Dinosaur Discoveries, featuring classic segments of CBS anchorman Walter Cronkite as the host, which aired on A&E in 1991. It was later reshown on the Disney Channel until the late 1990s. Sereno was named one of the People magazine's 50 most beautiful people from 1997.
Next up, time for the Paleo News. And Greg, you got us an exciting story, so go ahead.
Oh yes, a very, very exciting news in the world of Ice Age mammal findings. Over the centuries, many examples of prehistoric megafauna from Eurasia have been found in the permafrost, ranging from horses, woolly mammoths to woolly rhinos. But never before in history has a prehistoric predator from the Ice Age ever been found in permafrost until now, and it was big cats nonetheless. The story we have here comes courtesy of the Siberian Times. Frozen cave lion carcass found. In remote and icy Siberia, bodies of long-extinct ancient animals are often found preserved in the thick permafrost, from woolly mammoths to ancient horses. These carcasses have been so well preserved that some reports suggest that the meat is often fresh enough to eat and can even contain liquid blood. In another stunning find, the Siberian Times reports the sensational discovery of two almost perfectly preserved cave lion cubs. Thought to be at least 10,000 years old, the lions were found earlier this summer in the Sakha, Yakutia Republic of Siberia, famed for many other striking discoveries of Ice Age animals. The creatures lived during the Pleistocene, when the world was gripped by repeated ice ages as the glaciers expanded and retracted. All that had been previously found of cave lions in the area were some skulls and fragments of teeth and bones. The lions in question, easily the best preserved ever discovered, are thought to be Eurasian cave lions, Panthera leospalia, which are among the largest species of lion ever to have lived, with a shoulder height of 1.2 meters or 3.9 to 4 feet tall. They would have stalked the grasslands, taken down reindeer, horses, and possibly even young mammoths, with which they shared the landscape. Why they disappeared is a little less certain, but perhaps as their prey species dwindled due to a combination of climate change and human hunting, they were no longer able to survive in the cold of Europe. The cubs have undergone a preliminary study, and the results will be presented at the end of November in the Siberian town of Yakutia to both national and international press. They'll be shown along with a whole host of other specimens dug out of the permafrost in the region, including mammoths, woolly rhinos, and ancient bison. While they have announced that the specimens are free of certain microbial infections to the deadly anthrax, all this significant detail of the pictures of the finds are being closely guarded.
Okay, giant Jurassic pterosaur sporting fangs. A little more than 200 million years ago, a four-fanged pterosaur flew over the vast desert of Triassic Utah, snagging other reptiles with its toothy mouth until it met its untimely end on the banks of a dried-up oasis, new research finds. The pterosaur had a massive wingspan of 4.5 feet, or 1.3 meters, such as about as wide as a 10-year-old child is tall, and sported a total of 110 teeth, 4 of them inch-long, 2.5 centimeter fangs, said study researcher Brooks Britt, an associate professor of geology at Brigham Young University in Utah. Brigham Young University student Scott Meek found the specimen, including its skull and bones from its body, in 2014 when he was excavating bones from a 300-pound, 136-kilogram chunk of sandstone. The chunk came from the same cemetery in Utah near the Colorado border, Britt said. A geologic analysis of the quarry suggests that during the late Triassic, many animals congregated around a lush oasis, decked out with plants, surrounded by a vast desert. But then the oasis dried up, leaving the fauna and flora without a drop of water. The animals likely died during a severe drought, and the sediments indicate their carcasses were buried when the rains returned to normal and the lake filled with the lapping waves burying the bones with sand, Britt said. The ancient sand and water did a good job of preserving the pterosaur's fossils, that researchers can create a detailed picture of the animal. For instance, the pterosaur had spaces in its brain case and lower jaw that suggest the bones are air-filled and wide, just like the bones of later pterosaurs and birds, to which pterosaurs are not related, Brett said. Furthermore, the pterosaur had surprisingly small eyes, and its dentition is quite a mix with a combination of fangs and minuscule teeth on each side of the lower jaws, Brett said. In all, it has 80 teeth on its lower jaw, including the 4 fangs, and 30 on its upper jaws, including 80 little ones on the front, and 22 medium teeth in the back. Its odd smile isn't all that different from other early pterosaurs, which tend to sport a mix of dramatically different shaped teeth. That's unlike pterodactyloid, another type of flying reptile, which also like the Dimorphodon, a medium-sized pterosaur that lived during the Jurassic. The newfound species has a relatively large head and comparatively short wings, indicated it did not soar over vast areas, but likely flew in places filled with trees and other obstacles. They probably fed on insects or small land-dwelling animals, including a small crocodilomorph known as the Spinosuchian, which Brett describes as a fast creature resembling a crocodile, but with the legs of a chihuahua. That's all.
And our last story for Paleo News, dinosaurs use nasal passages to help cool off their brains. My work represents the first test of the hypothesis that elaborated the nasal passages of large dinosaurs functioned as efficient heat exchangers, explained Jason Broke, doctoral student researcher at Ohio University and lead author of the study. Using a branch of engineering known as computational fluid dynamics, Broke simulated the movement of air and heat through the nasal passages of various dinosaur species. Nasal passages act as air conditioners, warming and humidifying air as it's breathed in, and cooling and drying it as it leaves the body. This process cools blood destined for the brain. Modern mammals, birds, lizards, and crocodiles use a variety of structures, some simple and some complex, to accomplish heat exchange efficiently. However, a detailed reconstruction of the three-dimensional shape of the nasal passages in dinosaurs have shown that large dinosaurs, whose body would have held on to more heat than smaller-bodied animals, needed elaborate and specialized nasal passages to avoid overheating their brains. For most dinosaurs that I looked at, there would have been a substantial amount of psychologically active soft tissues in their noses, continued Broke. This strongly suggests that dinosaur airways were more than capable of changing the attributes of the respired air. These findings provide an answer to the mystery of how dinosaurs avoided having their large bodies overheat their small brains, a question that has plagued paleontologists reconstructing dinosaur physiology. By having blood detour through the nasal passages and dump some of the excess heat before reaching the brain, dinosaurs were able to keep their brains at an optimal temperature for their bodies, said Broke. And that concludes the Paleo News.
King Kong set photos revealed. As announced earlier this week, legendary and Warner Brothers pictures have some monstrous big screen plans over the next few years. First up on the road to 2020's Godzilla vs. Kong is Kong Skull Island. The Jordan Vogt Roberts film is structured in Hawaii, and the local realtor in Hawaii have posted photos of what they prefer to be images from the King Kong set. Check them out below. A trip back to the mysterious indigenous home of the King of the Apes. The new film will reportedly follow theme explorers, led by a character played by Tom Hiddleston, who ventured deep inside the treacherous primordial island to find the leader's brother and a mythical serum, confronting extraordinary creatures along the way. From the look of the below Kong set photos, the production appears to be on the right track as far as monsters go. Samuel L. Jackson, Brie Larson, John Goodman, June Tian, Corey Hawkins, Jason Mitchell, John Ortiz, Shia Wingham, and Toby Kebbell are also set to star in Kong Skull Island. A few of them can be seen posting together in the third photo from the tour company. Per Samuel L. Jackson's Instagram, he's starting to pilot the helicopter picture. Will we be seeing the same helicopters on the King Kong set? They certainly seem to match the River 1970s setting. Coming to you from comingsoon.net.
And now time for the book review by Scott and myself. And today's book review, we're going over Adrian Mayer's books, The First Fossil Hunters and The Fossil Legends of the First Americans. So what's your thoughts on it, Scott, since you are more familiar with the books than I am?
I actually know Adrian Mayer. She's a very nice person.
Oh, cool.
She's a vocal at Stanford University. And the these two wonderful books she's written, explore the idea that ancient cultures knew about fossils before the formal science of paleontology, and that they knew about these fossils, and these fossils partly inspired them or incorporated into their mythologies. The first book, The First Fossil Hunters, is primarily about the ancient Greeks and Romans. The second book, Fossil Legends of the First Americans, is about Native American cultures' knowledge of fossils.
Right, and if I can cut in right quick.
And so, really, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Sorry to cut in, but isn't in the first book, that's where she introduces her hypothesis about the griffin being based on Protoceratops in the Mongolian deserts.
Yes, it's a major part of the book, but that was originally introduced in a paper she wrote for the International Society of Cryptozoology Journal back in the late 80s. That's the first time I had ever heard of her. I was a member of the same society and read that article. But yeah, it's really fascinating how Protoceratops fossils, the way that it's got the bird-like beak, the almost mammalian-looking body, was probably the inspiration for the legend of the griffin.
True, and I think originally
and then it spread from there, you know?
Yeah. And
another thing she touches on in the first book is the fact that elephant bones, particularly mammoth mastodon, when you look at an elephant's skull without the trunk, which has no kind of skeletal supports to it, it looks like a giant eye in the center of this big skull.
Cyclops.
And this is obviously the inspiration for the legend of the Cyclops. In her book, there's even a picture where somebody has taken an elephant skeleton and reassembled it to look like a giant human.
That's
so, if you didn't know how the skeleton was supposed to fit together, you could actually build a Cyclops out of an elephant skeleton, which is amazing.
True, very true, and it sounds very fascinating. I do recall that in the griffin legend in particular, that originally griffins didn't have wings, they actually had large ears. And, it's easy to assume that they probably got the idea of large ears from the frill of a Protoceratops. And
imagine how the story changed over time as it passed from one culture and one region into another orally.
True.
Of course, the story mutate over time, just the same way that stories of the rhino mutated into the legend of the unicorn.
Right, and
similar process.
Same with the Leviathan in the Bible. It mentions, it's actually, if you remove some of the more mystical elements from it, you get a pretty good description of a Nile crocodile. According to some interpretations, of course, and I do think that the second book mentions the thunder beasts as well as the sea monsters that are recorded in Native American legends.
Yeah, well, a lot of this, particularly the stuff in the Native American book, touches on cryptozoology, because a lot of the North American cryptids, a lot of their history thought to be in Indian legends and stories, which I think there probably is some truth to the fact that some of the animals that are described in the Indian traditions probably were seen alive, like some of the stories about the mammoths, the giant beaver. It's debatable, but one interesting thing that she touches on in the Indian book that's very true is academic racism against Native Americans and their contributions to the history of paleontology. Like the famous mammoth bones that were found in Big Bone Lick, Kentucky, were originally discovered by Indians, and their contribution was completely erased by the academics, which is a tragedy.
True, and I'm glad
that's not the main part of the book.
Right.
She's in all sorts of evidence like that. Not only did Native Americans understand that these were fossils, but they also had a vague understanding of the concept of extinction. Because if you look at some of their traditions, like out west in the Southwest, I think it's the Navajos have the story of the Umtahi and the Umtahila, and their explanation of what the Umtahi was, where they were like lizards and snakes that they knew living now, but they were much larger, but they were no longer around anymore.
Right.
So that's obviously they had a vague concept of the idea of extinction. That these animals don't live anymore, which is very interesting. And a lot of the times, fossils would be found and would be considered sacred relics. We found pictures of Indian sacred relics that pieces of trilobite fossils and stuff of that nature have actually been built into the relic.
Right, and it puts me in mind of a lot of things that I've read about. Like I said, I'm still reading these books myself, but it is very fascinating, and I do hope that this does shed. Oh, go ahead.
One important layer to the Native American thing that a lot of the tribes that existed in North America had come from other places. Well, at least the ones in the United States, they come from other places. Like there were tribes that lived in the Southwest and lived on the plains of America that had come from Mexico and also had come down from Canada.
Mm-hmm. And
part of what drove that, at least in the 17th and 18th centuries, was the arrival of the horse by the Spaniards. The horse culture was a major revolution for Native Americans because they had apparently never had horses before, and once they discovered horses and started using them, they become much more mobile, and you had a lot of migratory tribes that would follow the buffalo herds. They might spend summer one place and winter another place. There was a lot of migration going on, and eventually, the Indian wars had a profound impact on where the tribes were at, how far apart they were dispersed. But the point I'm getting at here is that a lot of the legends of the tribes that lived in the Southwest and lived on the plains had originated in places like Canada and Mexico, and they had brought their mythologies with them. So, in other words, monsters that Indians in the Southwest and the plains were talking about that were inspired by fossils may have actually been inspired by fossils from when they were living in Mexico and in Canada.
And it's a very...
So you kind of have to understand that.
Yeah, and it's...
But both of the books are wonderful books, and I highly recommend them.
And from what I've read, they are very good reads as well. And to put some of my thoughts here, it puts me a lot in mind of, how mythologies are inspired by the natural world. I mean, for example, take the, I think they're called Homo florensis, the Hobbit people, or as they're commonly called. I think there's a current hypothesis that they could have been the inspiration for, the little people or fairies or hobbits or goblins, or not really hobbits, that's a later addition, but you know what I'm saying.
In the same area reported called Ring Pendeck that some people think may actually be potentially the survival of Florence.
And hopefully, if we can find more examples of this, let's see, I'm trying to think. I remember also that in the early Middle Ages Europe, they would take ammonite shells and carve a head on them and call them snake stones and use that for healing and other mystical purposes. And overall, it just goes to show you that ancient people knew a lot more stuff. That's not saying they had any kind of secret knowledge or anything like that, like some cult groups claim, but they were a lot smarter than people give them credit for. And to see that the Native Americans and, other ancient peoples like the ancient Greeks and Romans had an understanding of paleontology, even though it wasn't, as refined as it is today, shows that, our curiosity at any age does lead to new discoveries. And I do agree with you wholeheartedly.
That, the academics early on kind of had a disdain for the oral traditions of the Indians because they looked down on them as a primitive people and didn't give them enough credit for actually understanding the world as good as they did, which is sad.
True.
It really was. It was academic racism.
Basically, it's just like how say, our modern day architects would look down on buildings such as the pyramids or Stonehenge, thinking they're much better and all that. But anyways, I guess to conclude it here, you highly recommend this book, and I do as well. And
absolutely,
if I'm not mistaken, these books are available as PDFs online. If I'm not mistaken.
Well, but they're for sale on Amazon too.
Okay then, so check out the books. They are once again The First Fossil Hunters and The Fossil Legends of the First Americans by Adrian Mayer. And here's our last segment of our pop culture news. We're going to go talk about Mesozoica. And yesterday they had another live stream of their game, showing off more what the game can do and whatnot. And it seems that they have better graphics and better quality animations and whatnot, so they're getting better. And also, the biggest news though, in recent discovery of the raptor, Dakota raptor, Stenony, they have actually now revealed the codename Dragon Dromaeosaur, and it is, in fact, Dakota Raptor. And I know there's probably going to be a few people out there that's going to make a couple of jokes about my name and this dinosaur. Max Hawthorne has already sent me a message about that already, so... But the Dakota Raptor, on the other hand, will be covered more in detail next week when we cover more paleo news from that. So... And that concludes the game news.
Okay, if it's the recording's on, then alright. If we're recording, then here goes nothing. Alright. For perhaps my favorite entry in our Paleofauna of the Week spotlight, we are spotlighting a canid, and the largest canid, so to speak. Our featured animal this week is Epicyon haydeni. The dimensions of this monster dog.
Okay. The giant dog. That must have been what brought you out here. You thought I was talking about you, did.
Now. Okay. Alright, just all distractions aside. The size of this dog. The dog measured about 5 feet in length, 1 meter tall to shoulder, or 3 feet tall. And the largest recorded specimen of Epicyon haydeni measured 374.8 pounds. That's a very, very big doggy, the size of a modern lion. And this dog was a member of the Borophaginae, or bone-crushing dogs, which are a subfamily of Canidae, which were endemic to North America and were top predators for many millions of years. I'll get more on them after I finish the notes. For paleobiology, Epicyon had a massive head and powerful jaws, giving his skull a lion-like shape rather than a wolf. While the exact methods of hunting and prey on Epicyon are not known with certainty, other powerful canids such as Canis deers, the dire wolf, are thought to have grown stronger so they could tackle larger, more powerful prey. And another note on that, the paws of Borophagines are shaped differently than modern canids, more suited for manipulating their environment and possibly for grappling, which means that they were not quite as good of runners as modern canids like wolves, for example. And given the muscular and heavy build of Epicyon may have had a similar prey preference, as it would have been easier for it to chase and catch these types of prey rather than smaller, faster prey. It may also run upon more scavenging and actual hunting. And there are 3 species recognized. The giant Epicyon haydeni, which is the type species for the genus, the Epicyon elerodontoides, and Epicyon savis, fossil specimens. They range from Florida to Alberta, Canada, to California, from Nebraska to Kansas, New Mexico, and Texas. So basically almost the entire continent of North America. And Epicyon existed for about 15 million years, from the Hemiphilian age of the early Miocene to the Hemiphilian of the late Miocene. The 4th premolar in the jaw is what gives this dog its incredible bite force. And a pack of these would have been probably one of the most terrifying sights in the Miocene, hands down.
And now time for the paleo bits. The dinosaur Tachynosaurus was informally referred to as Jurassinosaurus after the 1993 film Jurassic Park, and the species epithet Nedigo-apothermia, I think that's how it's pronounced, anyways, was formed from the surnames of the film's main stars: Sam Neill, Lauren Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough, Bob Peck, Martin Forenzo, Irena Richards, and Joseph Malezzo. Director Steven Spielberg, who funded the Chinese dinosaur research, proposed the name. Dong Zhenming ultimately discarded the genus name Jurassinosaurus, which is now a nom-nubidan, in favor of Tachynosaurus, but retained the species names honoring the actors.
It's prehistoric matchup time for you folks, ladies and gentlemen, and it's again mammal versus reptile. And our two combatants tonight are the giant lizard from the outback, Megalanium prisica, making its second debut in the prehistoric matchup circuit, and the debut of a previous paleofauna animal, the short-faced bear. The lizard was supposed to fight Andrewsarchus originally, but we swapped it out to be a little bit more on the fair side.
Alright then, now to introduce our first contestant, Arctodus simus, the short-faced bear. Dimensions: 11 to 12 feet, or 3.4 to 3.7 meters tall. With a 14-foot, 4.3 meter vertical arm reach, it is 5 to 6 feet, or 1.5 to 1.8 meters high at the shoulder when walking on all fours, and it weighed 957 kilograms, or 2,110 pounds. Classification: the short-faced bear belongs to the group of bears known as the Termagantine. Paleobiology. Researchers disagree on the diet of Arctodus. Analysis of their bones show high concentrations of nitrogen-15, a stable isotope, accumulated by meat-eaters with no evidence of ingestion of vegetation. S1-E23 was highly carnivorous and as an adult would have required 16 kilos or 35.3 pounds of fresh meat per day to survive. One proposal for its predatory habits envisions S1-E23 as a brutish predator that overwhelmed the large animals of the Pleistocene with its great physical strength, and despite being very large, its limbs were too graceful for such an attack strategy. Because the long legs enabled it to run at speeds of 50 to 70 kilometers an hour, or 30 to 40 miles per hour, an alternative hypothesis is that it may have hunted by running... I'm sorry? Oh, anyways. By running down Pleistocene herbivores such as wild horses and saiga antelopes in a cheetah-like fashion, at one time earning the name running bear. However, during pursuit of speedy game animals, the bear's sheer physical mass would have been a handicap. Arctodus skeletons do not articulate in a way that would allow for quick turns, an ability required of any predator that survives by killing agile prey. Arctodus moved in pacing-like motion like a camel, horse, or modern bears, making it built more for endurance than for great speed. S1-E23, according to these arguments, was ill-equipped to be an active predator, leading some to conclude it was a kleptoparasite, using its enormous size to intimidate smaller predators such as dire wolves, smilodon, and American lions from their kills and steal their food. Habitat. The short-faced bear inhabited North America during the Pleistocene epoch from about 1.8 million years ago to about 11,000 years ago. It is the most common early North American bear, and it was most abundant in California. And on to Scott to get our second contestant.
All right. Our second contender is Megalania prisca. Dimension: 7 meters and 23 feet long. Weight: 600 to 620 kilograms, or 1,320 to 1,370 pounds. Classification: several studies have attempted to establish the phylogenetic position of Megalania within the Varanidae. An affinity with the Parenthi, Australia's largest living lizard, has been suggested based on skull morphology. The most recent comprehensive studies propose a sister taxon relation with the Komodo dragon based on neurocranial similarities. The lace monitor is the closest living Australian relative. Paleobiology. Megalania is the largest terrestrial lizard known to have existed. Judging from its size, it would have fed mostly upon medium to large-sized animals, including any of the giant marsupials like the protodon, along with other reptiles and small mammals, as well as birds and their eggs and chicks. It had heavily built limbs and body, and a large skull complete with a small crest in between the eyes, and a jaw full of serrated blade-like teeth. Along with other variegated lizards, such as the Komodo dragon and the lace monitor, Megalania belongs to the proposed clade Toxicothera, which contains all known reptile clades possessing toxin-secreting oral glands. Habitat. They were part of a megafaunal assemblage that inhabited southern Australia during the Pleistocene. They seem to have disappeared sometime after 50,000 years ago. The first Aboriginal settlers of Australia might have encountered them.
All right. So,
well, I'm going to go with the Megalanian because of the poison.
I would argue for Megalania as well, given that even though it is a little bit lighter, it is longer, and it probably could run a little bit quicker than compared to Archdus, based on the fact that it was probably able to, make quicker turns and things like that. So agility probably could go to the giant lizard. However,
probably had a sharp claw, like the Komodo dragon, to rip its prey open. The Komodo dragons, they use their claw to rip the bellies open of their prey.
I can see.
So I would imagine Megalania probably had for those two.
And like the artwork produced for the showcase, I'm pretty sure Megalania, if given the chance, could possibly rear up on its back legs and probably just smack the hell out of Archdus if it gave him the chance. Though I am certain
but let's not count out bears here. Bears are horribly underestimated in matchups. Modern bears are some of the toughest animals out there in terms of being able to take hits, take abuse, and so forth. And short-faced bear here, being larger than your modern bear, isn't going to be a pushover.
True.
I've got a verdict here from our historian friend Stephen about this matchup that I'm going to read off here.
All right, then. So let's see what Stephen has to say about it.
Well, I'll start off with what he has to say about Androzarchus' fight. What he said about Androzarchus here, it's a hard fight to pick. Since only the skull of Androzarchus is known, we can't compare size. Most precursors I've seen put it at 5 to 7 meters long, equal to Mega. Androzarchus had a powerful bite, but Mega had venom based on modern marvelage, which it's a part of. Both to be fast, jaws of sight, Androzarchus probably had no other weapons, but Mega had teeth, venom, claw, tail, take down prey. I think Mega would have preyed on giant roos and diprotodons like modern Komodos on buffalo. Androzarchus is currently thought to be more a scavenger that uses size to take over kills with eating plants, etc. Omnivore. I've heard of the Mega. It has more go over in terms of offensive power. Plus, should the Andrew win, any biting wins because the Mega offensive through the venom, leaving Andrew extreme involved without dead. Now on for our bear fight. Notes via the Mega battle are valid. Venom, claws, teeth, tail as its abilities, larger break, etc. Bear is smaller but just as heavy and powerful build. Bear had claws and devastating swipes and powerful jaws and bite. Bear is thought to be a stamina runner, I guess like wild dogs and hyenas today. And it's thought to be able to steal kills from Smackdown and Daryl, as well as being omnivorous. Modern bears can be fast. So I select the short-range bear, which is as quick, 30 miles per hour, but studies this it wasn't agile, straight line speed but no turning ability. Close fighting, Mega with the early advantage, but bear would steal the win due to greater reach of its arms. I suspect the bear would be able to out-wrestle the Mega, but not without taking damage.
So really, it's with that said, it's going to be hard to call this fight in a way. But like with Scott, I think if it did have a venomous bite, even if Archdus managed to kill... go ahead, Scott.
You got the point, and got bitten, you would probably be a dead man walking from the venom.
Right, and so even if he did win the fight against Megalania, he would die later on from the wounds. But true, I will say though, given the more robustness of a bear, it might be able to put up a damn good fight against Megalania and potentially win. But it's still a matter of who can get the first strike in, and if Megalania gets the first strike in, plus the venom factor, like you said, Scott, the bear would be a dead man walking.
As if it does get bit. One good hard swipe from the bonker hard swipe to the Megalania skull, and it's a dead lizard. It's pretty much.
True that.
If you go how strong modern bears are, grizzly bears have been documented killing modern big cats with about one paw swipe to the skull. Even been recorded killing things like bulls with but a few swipes to the skull. And short-faced bear, being a 2,000-pound bear, is going to deliver enough force to potentially decapitate some of its adversaries.
That's true, and given that very wide sweep, about, I think it said here, an arm span of 14 feet, basically a vertical arm reach, that's going to give him a pretty wide swing area, and so I still side with Megalania, but only because of the venom factor, as well as, it could possibly rear up and still give the bear a run for its money. But given this assessment, I guess it's a lot harder to call than the initial call I had made earlier, so both of these animals probably would cancel each other out, if you think about it. Is there any... Of
course, one more weakness on Megalania's part, stamina. Just like with any covalent reptile, it's not going to have stamina for a prolonged fight. And bears also have another thing going for them. stamina and endurance to be able to keep their activities up for a longer period of time before tiring, much like canids today can.
True to that. That's one factor I hadn't considered, the metabolism of both of the animals. Is there anything else you have to add, Scott?
Nope, that's about it.
All right. So, I would say this verdict is... we didn't quite catch that, Scott.
Like I said, I'm going to stick with Megalania, but I can see what you would call it a tie.
Yeah. Given the arguments as Greg has made, and also from Stephen, given his analysis, I think I'll revert from Megalania winning to a very close tie for this one. And what about you, Greg? Who do you think would win?
I'm sticking with the bear to win, because the bear's probably not going to get hit very easily.
True.
Likelihood.
All right, then. So this is the first time we've all disagreed about this. So, anyways, but to all of our viewers and listeners out there, please report in our comments section on our YouTube video, as well as on our Facebook page and DeviantArt pages, and tell us who do you think would win in this fight. And I think that concludes our episode. So we're at a mixed consensus about who would win, and we've covered everything. So I guess have a good night, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween,
And try not to get too crazy tonight, everyone. And last thing on our list, please support the show by going to our Patreon page at patreon.com.